First of all, I just wanted to thank you for bringing me into this world. And my question is actually twofold, and it's connected. One is that my best friend and advisor, my father, passed away last year. He's right here with me.
Good.
He's having a great time, I know.
Yeah.
And I'm too, actually. Because
yeah, you can see that.
Yeah, I know. I'm a teacher. I hide it real well. Having a great time. So I am at a point in my life where I'm trying to move into a new direction. And those were the times in my life where he was always there. And I would like to know what's the best way for me to talk to him and what's the best way for me to move to the new direction. So anything Abraham can offer, I would be happy.
Most important that we really want you, and he does too, wants you to know, is that you're always talking to him because he's always aware of you. And so that's not the question, how can I talk to him? Because when you know what you don't want, you know what you do want, that's talking to him. When you're thinking about him, you're talking about him. And there's awareness about that. But the question is, how can you hear more? Now, it's interesting. Esther's sweetheart made his transition a few years ago. And just the day before she got on the airplane to come here to see you, she got on the freeway and was looking for lunch. And instead of going into San Antonio, where she usually goes, the freeway they're doing some construction and it was blocked up. So she thought, well, I'll just go the path of least resistance because there's food either way. I'll go where the traffic isn't right now. So she started up the freeway, and that's the part of town the part of the area that Jerry and Esther spend a lot of time hanging around in. They almost always went that way. And there are several places, and so she's driving up the freeway. She's aware of where she is, and she's looking over and she's thinking, oh, there's Dave and Barbara's shop. And then she's thinking, and there's a place that we had the truck renovated. And oh, there's the man that put the new tires on everything. And so she's just noticing all of these places. And then her thought was, there's all these thoughts. They were pleasant thoughts, pleasant enough thoughts. Then her conscious thought was, Jerry and I left a lot of thought forms in these here parts because everywhere I look, I'm recalling something that we were doing together. And then she hears Jerry say very clearly, what makes you think you're remembering it? Maybe I'm thinking about it now and you're picking up on what I'm thinking.
Okay.
So Esther's saying, so it's you thinking about Dave and Barbara's shop and it's you thinking about where the tires were changed? And he said, yeah, remember when the trailer flipped off over there? This is real time. And so then Esther began immediately, her thoughts turned to a friend who has been experiencing something similar to what you're experiencing, who's been going to a grief counselor, who explained to him that you need to just let go. You need to have closure, and you need to move on. This is the advice of this grief counselor. And so Esther's having those thoughts. And then she heard Jerry say, don't you think that's funny? Well, Esther wasn't feeling it was too funny in the moment. Don't you think that's funny? And Jerry said, since we are eternal, how can we have closure? Since every relationship is eternal, how could there ever be closure? Why do we have to close a door when a big door has just opened? Why do you deliberately try to keep from thinking about me when I'm thinking about you all the time and your mind is wide open and you're receiving my thoughts? Why would you want to stop the fun we're still having, is what he's saying to her. And so we know people are all mixed up about what they think death is. But you know, we talked about it already today, about how our friend was talking about the nebulous as compared to what you can really see. And just because you can't see it in terms of its flesh, blood, and bone doesn't mean that it's not there for you to know and for you to sense and for you to experience and for you to continue with. If this was your best friend and mentor, why not continue to let that be? Because the interest is certainly keen from the point of view of your father. You've just got to let it in. And when you do, you will begin to understand your own eternity. And when you begin to understand your own eternalness, then you'll stop doing what everybody does, which is worrying about death and pushing against death, this inevitable thing. Really, people? Really? Really? Something that is going to happen to every one of you and everyone you know, and you've decided to let it be this big burden that you carry around and grieve over for no good reason. We think it's time to give that up. But at the same time that you're giving up that old belief, which isn't valid, maybe you'll give up a lot of other resistant beliefs that are holding you back. The entire premise of what we are teaching you is this. You're here and we're all here. You're here and we're all here. We're all here and aware of you. We're all here and aware of you. We're all here and aware of you. It's about the connection between you here and us here. Everything you feel is about that relationship. Talk about satisfaction. Is there a denser, more uncomfortable, more unnecessary emotion than grief? We don't think so. And what does that tell you? Is there anything further from what your inner being knows than that? It's time to give it up. It's time to stop letting the things that others have been saying who don't know keep you from the experiences that you want and that are so available to you.
I completely understand that. And it's not as much grief as frustration, because what you just mentioned doesn't happen to me often enough because I'm Hungarian and my time with him, most of my time with him was in Hungary.
Doesn't matter.
So how do I because when I go home, like I went home 3 weeks again without him, obviously, and I was so full with him. How can I do that here too?
Well, because he didn't stay over there.
I know. I'm just saying that I can't drive down the road here in Philadelphia or New Jersey.
Jerry comes to every seminar. And
Cool.
Esther's all
Okay.
over the place.
All right.
Comes to every seminar. If anybody can see energy, you've spotted him by now, we're certain. He's a big ball of energy, and he moves around the room. Has anybody spotted him today? Esther has a friend who sees him every time. Every time. And so there's no location when you're talking about source energy or this non-physical energy. But you know what does change? Your expectation. That was the lead-in for Esther's poignant moment in time. She was there in a familiar environment, misunderstanding why she was getting those thoughts. When she receives him here, very often she receives him in an environment where she doesn't, although almost every place reminds him of him because she went almost every place with him. But it's not those memories that give you availability. But Esther had a greater expectation, and maybe you do too. And your expectation is part of what you let in, isn't it? So we have some questions for you. Do you accept that you are an extension of source energy?
Absolutely.
And so do you accept that the source energy of which you are an extension exists and is aware of you?
Yes.
And do you accept that since that energy is aware of you, that you could be aware of that energy?
Yes.
And that it's just a matter of focusing and letting it in. But if you have decided to bring closure to something, first of all, you can't bring closure to it because all energy is still in motion. But you can make yourself feel frustration when you attempt something that you can't do. It's like saying, come to me, this thing I don't believe. Come to me, this thing I don't believe. Come to me, this thing I don't believe. I want you, but I don't believe you. I want you, but I don't believe you. I want you, but I don't believe you. I want you. And you do that with dead people. There's no dead. You do it with money. You do it with so many things. Your beliefs hinder your desires. They don't need to. You know what to do about it. How do you feel about death now? Did your feeling about it change just a little bit with this conversation? Yeah. It's such an interesting thing. We see so many of you. You'll have some dearly departed who's aware of you, and you'll be at a state of non-resistance for whatever reason, and you'll receive a glimpse of a conversation. And almost as soon as you receive the glimpse of the conversation, whether it's something visual or auditory or just a feeling, doesn't matter how you interpret it, as you receive that glimpse, then usually your mind goes right to the loss, and then you begin the blocking of it. Where when you receive the glimpse, instead of going to the loss, you would go to the found, and you would focus on, oh, hey. When Esther's father died, she laid in bed. They were in the monster bus. They were in Portland. And Esther was in bed one night feeling the sorrow of her father's departure. Now, Esther knows he's not really departed, but he felt gone, and she felt sad. And so she laid there not wanting to wake Jerry up, and she was thinking about her father. And then she hears her father say, hey, kiddo. And she says, hey, Daddy. And then she said, "What's it like?" And he said, "It's really good here." He said, "I should have come sooner." So they visited with tears running in her ears. It was a delightful experience. But they never really had a lot to talk about when he was around. He was really quiet and really private, and they didn't talk too much in the last years. She would call the house and he'd say, "Hey, how are you? Want to talk to your mother?" And that was the end of the conversation. And so she didn't have a lot of long conversations with her dad. And so she's just trying to find something to think about that they might find in common, like death. And they talked for a little while, and then he said, "Well, I'm going to go." And Esther said, No, I don't want to say goodbye. And he said, "Well, then let's just keep saying hello."
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying goodbye. I'm just saying, this is a little boring here, kid. You don't seem to have much that you want to talk to me about. And I got places to go, things to do, people to see. And when you are non-physically focused, you are fully alive, you see, and willing to focus anywhere that you are asked for. It is that way, you see. And those special relationships like Jerry and Esther and you and your father and so many relationships, they are eternal. They are as much as you will let them be. They are as much as you ask for them to be, and then as much as you let them be, just like everything else that you are creating.
Thank you. And that was actually on the day of when I got home after when he passed. That night, I woke up about 2 a.m. and I honestly, he was really sitting there at the
caught you
bed.
off guard. You'd been asleep.
It really did. But
hey,
then
wake up! I'll be here for a minute. Boom.
And it was right there, and I started talking to him, and we were talking about all kinds of things. And then after a while, he just decided that he wants to go windsurfing in Florida, because that was the one place he didn't get to windsurf. And so I wrote about this, and of course my husband says, "Can you just not tell this to the world that you had this conversation?" And I said, but I did. And what frustrates me a little bit, is that I haven't been able to call him back in, although the fact that I'm talking to is him.
Well, you don't call him in, really, because he's always right there. You let him in by knowing that he's always there and by not trying to force it. You see, what usually happens, and this is the thing that he most wants you to hear, because he was your friend and your mentor, you usually went to him when you were in trouble. Well, now, that doesn't work. Because when you've got something that's bothering you, you're not open to him. So when he's most present is when you don't need him. And when you most need him is when you can't hear him. Isn't that the pits?
Okay.
That's what has people all bound up in this. You think that your guardian angels will come to guard you. Well, you don't need to be guarded. And you think that they'll come to help you out of trouble. Well, they don't come to help you out of trouble. They're on the satisfying and up end of the equation, you see. So you got to hang around there to receive. When you're in need, even though they're right there, you can't let them in. Esther remembers shortly after Jerry made his transition, and she was suffering mightily. And her sister was with her. They were in their house in Texas. And Esther was saying to Jeannie, "Where is he? He said he would haunt me." That's what he said. "I'll haunt you." He said he would be here, but I can't find him. Where is he? Where is he? And her desire was so extreme. Even though she was not seeing him, her desire was so strong. And all of a sudden, a book, one of the Sarah books, his favorite Sarah book, slammed down on the shelf. Didn't just topple over. It went boom. And Jeannie was facing the bookshelf. She saw it fall. She saw it fall so hard that it bounced. And she said, "Yep, he's here. He's here." Esther's desire was so strong that he came even though she wasn't really letting him in. He was in the room, and he let her know that he was in the room, but she couldn't let him in. And even then, it wasn't enough. "Oh, you can tip over a book." Okay, if you can tip over a book, then come over here and light the room up. Move that bowl from there to over there. Hold my hand. Move my clothing. In other words, help me brush my teeth. In other words, you all are just weird. You just are. Anything that you push and try to make happen, you get in your own way. You just have to know, believe, trust, expect, And then our worlds are blended and your knowledge is complete and your satisfaction is more.